The House will please come to order. Good morning, members. Welcome to those of you in the chamber and those joining us virtually. It's our 34th day of the 66th general session. We appreciate all of you being here. Please call the roll.
Convening roll, 34th day, Wednesday, April 7th, 2021. Andrew. Baker.
Here.
Banks.
Here.
Bear.
Here.
Blackburn. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt. Excused. Clausen. Clifford.
Here.
Connolly. Crago.
Here.
Duncan. Eklund. Eklund. Excused. Air.
Here.
Flitner.
Here.
Fortner.
Here.
Gray. Greer. Excused. Ellenan.
Here.
Haroldson.
Here.
Harshman. Heiner.
Here.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
Here.
Knapp.
Here.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Here.
McGuire. Martinez. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom.
Here.
Nicholas. Nicholas. Oakley.
Here.
Obermueller.
Here.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman. Ottman. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe.
Here.
Schwartz.
Here.
Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Smith.
Here.
Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit.
Here.
Western.
Here.
Wharf. Williams. Excused. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Swanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Blackburn. Excused. Burkhart. Excused. Eklund. Nicholas. Blackburn. Ottman. Excused. $55 present, 5 excused.
Thank you very much. And ladies and gentlemen, today again, we're privileged to be joined by Pastor Zach Betchold of Grace United Church. So I guess as they say, take it home for us. Pastor, the last day of the 66th general session, take her home.
Well, grace and peace to each of you who have joined us here in person and online, and it's been an honor and a privilege to be here with you for the last few days. I know you have been hard at work for a lot longer than I've been here, and you're going to go home and continue to work hard. One of the privileges I have as a pastor, other than being here with you all, is telling people stories. And often we get to do that at the end of life, when we're saying goodbye, when we're honoring and celebrating and grieving our loved ones. And that's easily the biggest privilege that I have as a pastor. Give me a minute to tell a story. A couple of weeks ago, I had the honor to help loved ones say goodbye to a 36-year-old. My age. It was hard. But what I found in doing that service was the impact that young man had, not only on his community, but this entire state. People came from all over to celebrate his life. He had a lasting legacy at 36. We get to leave this place today and go home. Our legacy doesn't end here. We're going to go back to our everyday lives, going to go back to what we do, and yet the legacy that you all have here doesn't end here and now. It doesn't end at the end of your life. What you do today matters. And as somebody who's 36 himself, I often think I've got time to make an impact. I've got time to do this or that. And what we do today matters. I hope you hold that close. Hope you remember that in all the work that you do and the time that you spend with your families, your communities, and everyone in between. Remember, we build our legacy here and now and into the next day. Let us pray. Gracious and loving God, what a beautiful day to be here. Even though it's cooled off outside and there's a little bit of snow, it reminds us why we love it here in this great state. It is always an adventure. May we continue to build upon our legacies, not for fame, not for recognition, but for change, for impact, so that the world around us will know, so that the world around us will be better, so that we'll leave it better than we found it. Continue to send us from this place with your grace, with your peace, and with your love, and may we share it with all people. We pray these things in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Pastor. We appreciate that. And members, just a personal privilege. As I came in this morning, just before 7 o'clock, I walked up the stairwell, heading east, and you can see those two signs. One says House of Representatives, one says House Chamber. And I said, if this is the last day I walk through these doors, what am I going to do today? Literally this morning at 7 o'clock, I said that myself coming up those stairs. So sorry, you brought tears to my eyes when I'm thinking about that day. So thank you, Pastor. We'll look forward to you joining us again for another time. Appreciate it. Yeah, right down that middle hallway, if you will. We got this is the house send-off right down that middle aisle. So thank you. All right, thank you very much. And thank you for all the members online who are clapping virtually. We appreciate that. We have a privilege of the floor. Chairman Harshman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, if you could stand again, we've got some special guests from Casper, friends of many of ours, and down in the west balcony here. And it's not often when we get folks down here from Casper. Number one on our license plates and number one in our hearts. Now, Both these gentlemen are NCHS graduates. As you know, NCHS, Natrona County High School, celebrating our 125th anniversary this year, just a few years behind statehood. Pat Murphy's a 72 grad, and his son Sean is a 2003 grad in Natrona County High School, but just really dear friends of the Casper community. Their family has done quite a legacy in the town of Casper for generation after generation. So we really appreciate you, and welcome to the People's House.
Well, we are pleased you're here, and we're glad you gave Chairman Harshman the last #1 in our hearts, #1 on our license plates for the year, I hope. All right. We appreciate everybody. We appreciate it. All right. Vice Chair Duncan, a privilege. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I know she doesn't want me to say anything, but we're going to. So today's lunch, don't make any plans because our chief clerk has decided to provide lunch for all of you. So please give her a big thank you and a hug when you see her.
And those of you joining virtually, it'll be in your mailbox when you get back. All right, Representative Schwartz, I see your hand up.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Privilege of the floor.
Please proceed.
Thank you. So first, I want to say how grateful I am that both our staff and our technology has reached the point where I think there's 20 of us participating by Zoom. And I know personally, it's meant a lot to me to get to be with my family that otherwise wouldn't have been possible. And I think it's something we need to recognize as a great feature as we move forward. But the downside is, here it is the last day of the session. And as much as I appreciate being on Zoom, I just want to express to all my colleagues I can see on my gallery view and all of the ones who I cannot see in the House chamber. This is a tough way to end the session. And I wish I could shake everybody's hands and say, I look forward to seeing you in the interim and next January. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Oh, that's sweet, Representative. You're probably at the ski lodge right now.
I'm up on the hill.
Thank you, Representative. We appreciate it. Any other privileges of the floor? All right, Journal Committee report.
Your Journal Committee reports that the Journal of April 6, 2021 has been read and recommends that it be approved. Representative Provenza.
So we have an even number on the Journal Committee, and Representative Harrelson wasn't here, but we're taking care of that. So not to worry. Appreciate that. Next is messages from the Senate.
Message 453. Mr. Speaker, Senate File 118, Federal Emergency COVID-19 Relief Funding. The Senate adopted the Joint Conference Committee #1 report on the bill listed above by the vote indicated. Ayes 24, noes 3, excused 3. Sincerely, Ellen Thompson, Senate Chief Clerk.
All right, members, we're at that order of business. Concurrences. Okay. Okay, I need to make an appointment for a second JCC on House Bill 92, and I'll just remember the body that this is the reviser's bill that we purposely did not meet on the second one, so we can go to an open committee to bring in a couple additional things. So it'll be Chairman Barlow, Sherwood, and Provenza on Joint Conference 2 to the reviser's bill. So now we're at that order of business. of reports, consideration of joint conference committee reports. The first report for our consideration is Joint Conference Committee number 1 on House Bill 36. Chairman Hunt.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move Conference Committee Report number 1 to House Bill 36, and please ask for your favorable consideration. Folks, the initial enacting date, the initial, not so much the enacting date, but point in time at which there would have been a shift in the committee had started out as January 1st of 2023. And then our friend down the hall had moved that clear back to July 1st of this year. And so we've struck a middle ground here. We're saying that on page 3, line 16, that we're deleting January 1 of 23, inserting January 1 of 22. And so it's a middle ground of the date. Nothing would change throughout the remainder of this year, but prior to the beginning of the next year's 2022 budget session, that those changes to the management council would be made. So, Mr. Chairman, that is the change that we've come up with, and so would ask you to please vote aye, but would take any questions.
Thank you. Members first time, Chairman Zwanitzer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I hate to be the guy that asks you to vote no, but I think I'm going to. So I appreciate compromise, right? And so if we have like funding in bills and we pass out let's say a fee of 100 and the body down the hall says 200, we all generally know it'll come back at 150. That's a compromise. I was fine with the bill if we delayed it for 2 years till 2023 when a new legislator was elected. I was actually fine if we did it in accordance in July 1st of this year. And we established, but arbitrarily picking next January in the middle of the session, 6 weeks before the budget session, it just causes me a lot of concern because you either force the existing 13 people of management council to make a whole lot of decisions in November, December about what the budget session might look like, or you wait till January and have those 10 people make decisions, or perhaps those 10 people take out the decisions of the 13. And I'll remind you that currently the House has more members on management council than the Senate does. That will change when this bill goes into effect at whatever date that is. And I guess where I'm really coming from, and I'm not trying to set the stage for controversy, but it is a redistricting year. And I would just say historically, there have been issues more with the other body that if combinations happen and you have to put people in the same districts to run against each other, just the way it goes, you might get 2 or 4 House members who are very unhappy having to run against each other. But if you get 2 or 4 senators unhappy, the plan goes bad a lot quicker. So I need a little bit more that there was some logic on how it was going to work internally with the legislative process, setting up for budget session. I would have been perfectly fine if it happened at the end of the budget session, which probably would have been the exact compromise in 18 months to get through the budget session next year and then switch up management council in anticipation for the next year. But I just think January 1st causes a lot of harm as a date that is just a weird arbitrary date before the budget session with a lot of stuff going to be going on right before the budget session, as we all know, depending on how some bills work today. I just want some more information that why January 1st was the right date, besides it was a compromise between the two bodies and it was the start of the calendar year. I don't think that works well in our legislative cycles. So not that I want to change up the rest of the bill. I really don't. I thought the 10 people was a good plan going forward, but I don't think converting management council halfway through the session is a good idea. So I'd encourage a no vote.
Thank you. Representative Summers, first time.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. And I have a little bit of the same concerns, and I actually talked to the chairman of the conference committee. I don't think January 1st works as well as perhaps the opening date of our legislative session. One is we're going to have to hold an election immediately. So that means if it's January 1st, we're going to have to do a virtual election process to then do this, as opposed if we were in session. So I do want a little bit more information on why we didn't wait till we were in session to do the switchover, because I in fact do think there's issues. I think if it's going to be a compromise, the people that are in there now should be allowed to carry through the work till session. And I'm interested in why that compromise wasn't reached.
Members, first time Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I guess I'm going to ask for a no vote, and I think this might just be a little bit of a whoopsie daisy. But as I'm looking at the conference committee report, I see that it says that we're dealing with the line 16, which is the enactment date, but it says to the engrossed copy, and we don't touch any of the other amendments in this conference committee report, which when you look at the report or the amendments that were passed out of the other body and brought over to us, they actually changed the date and when this would take effect as well. And as it stands, I believe if you look at it, it says that this takes effect January 1st, 2023, but then we have, so that's section 2, and then section 3, it actually has a different date for when this bill is effective. And so I think we've got some incongruencies, and maybe it's a good idea for us to go back and just make sure that we've got this tidied up. But I actually think the way that the amendment or the conference committee report reads actually has us saying that we're going to change membership prior to the bill being effective. And so I don't think we can have that. So I would ask for a no vote and allow us to go back and make sure we have this done right. Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Yin, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, I mean, when it comes to a compromise position, usually when we compromise, we understand where the Senate is coming from. The Senate and the conference committee didn't really offer an explanation on what their position, why their position was the way it is. So I do feel that even making a compromise position, at least if you make a compromise position, make the date make sense. I think the other members brought that up, but I think when you go to a compromise position, it'd be useful to understand where the Senate is coming from. And if the Senate doesn't want to divulge why they came to that position, I don't understand why we would give up on the House position then. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Any other member, first time? First time. I'm looking online. I don't see anybody yet. Any other member, first time? Members, we're voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1 to House Bill 36. A majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
No.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart, excused. Burt, excused. Clausen. Clifford.
No.
Connolly. Crago.
No.
Duncan. Eklund. Air.
No.
Flitner.
No.
Fortner.
Yes.
Aye. Is that an aye?
Yes, ma'am. Aye.
Gray. Greer, excused. Hallinan. Hallinan.
No.
Haroldson.
No.
Harshman. Harshman. Heiner.
Aye.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
No.
Knapp.
No.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Aye.
McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom.
No.
Nicholas. Oakley.
No.
Obermuller.
No.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman, excused. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe.
No.
No.
Schwartz. Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith.
Aye.
Stivar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit.
Aye.
Western.
Aye.
Western. Worf. Williams excused. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Sawanatzer. Mr. Speaker. Harshman. Excused. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Burkhart, excused to? Excused to no. Bear, no to aye. Wilson, aye to no, or no to aye. Further changes? Knapp, no to aye. Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 19 aye, 36 no, 5 excused.
By your vote, you have failed to adopt Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on House Bill 36. The next report for our consideration is Joint Conference Committee Number 1 on House Bill 158. Chairman Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1 to House Bill 158, and I'd ask for an aye vote. And ladies and gentlemen, this was actually brought to us, and the reason we asked for a no vote originally was there was some concerns on from LSO Legal about a couple of the words that were put in the original intent of the drafter. And so we asked for a no vote on this to go back and clean up that language. And there was two routes. We could have done this potentially in the reviser's bill, but it felt a little more responsible to do this in the actual bill itself. So we cleaned up the language, took out the two words that were concerning to LSO Legal, and I'd ask for an aye vote.
Any discussion on the joint conference? Any discussion? Any discussion? So members, we're voting on Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report to House Bill 158. A majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
Aye.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt, excused. Clausen. Clifford.
Aye.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air.
Aye.
Flitner.
Aye.
Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer, excused. Hallinan. 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 I think you're muted, sir. Hallinan. Haroldson.
Aye.
Hallinan, aye. Haroldson.
Aye.
Harshman, excused. Harshman, aye. Heiner.
Aye.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kenner.
Aye.
Knapp.
Aye.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Aye.
McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom.
Aye.
Nicholas. Oakley.
Aye.
Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman, excused. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe.
Aye.
Schwartz.
Aye.
Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith.
Aye.
Stybar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit.
Aye.
Western.
Aye.
Wharf. Williams excused. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 47 aye, 9 no, 4 excused.
By your vote, you have adopted Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on House Bill 158. The next conference committee report is number 1 on Senate File 118. Chairman Nicholas. Senate File, Joint Conference Number 1, Senate File 118, Chairman Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would move concurrence for Senate File 118, message number on Joint Conference Meeting Number 1, and ask for your favorable concurrence, ladies and gentlemen. So essentially, our good friends down the hall adopted all of our amendments, all of our bill as we presented to them, other than one modification. And that one modification had to do with a certain amount of funds that we set aside, $15 million, and it was set aside in order to capture the possibility that under the COVID relief funds and the ARP dollars, that we could not maintain maintenance of efforts that are required both in the higher education and in the health cuts that we made. After reviewing that 15 million was derived from before we sat down and compromised our positions and added money back into the higher education and added money back into the state health programs that we put back. And so it was the general agreement of both houses that 4 million would be more than sufficient. We don't believe we'll need it at all, but it's just a protective amount in case there is some maintenance of effort things that we don't fully understand as the rules come out and as the Treasury rules come out and the implementation of the things that we've done in our CapCon bill and in our budget bill. And so with that, happy to stand for any questions and ask for your aye vote.
Thank you. Any discussion on Joint Conference Number 1, Senate File 118? Any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, members, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee Number 1, report to Senate File 118. Majority of the elected members are required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
Aye.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt excused. Clausen. Clifford.
Aye.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air.
Aye.
Flitner.
Aye.
Fortner.
Aye.
Gray. Greer excused. Hallinan.
Aye.
Haroldson.
No.
Harshman. Heiner.
Aye.
Henderson. Hunt. Jennings. Kinner.
Aye.
Knapp.
Aye.
Larson Lloyd. Larson Dan.
Aye.
McGuire. Martinez. Nyman. Newsom.
Aye.
Nicholas. Oakley.
Aye.
Obermuller.
Aye.
O'Hearn. Olson. Ottman excused. Paxton. Provenza. Roscoe.
Aye.
Schwartz.
Aye.
Sherwood. Simpson. Summers. Stith.
Aye.
Stybar. Sweeney. Walters. Washit. Washit. You're muted, Washit.
So our rules have the opportunity for the chairman to give you so if you give me a thumbs up, I'll rule as an aye. Thank you.
Western.
Aye.
Wharf. Williams excused. Wilson. Winter. Yin. Zawanitzer. Mr. Speaker. Closing vote. Are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 49 aye, 7 no, 4 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to adopt Joint Conference Committee number 1 report on House Bill or Senate File 118. The next conference committee is Conference Committee number 1 on House Bill 127. Chairman Wilson.
Mr. Chairman, I haven't received back the formal concurrence report from LSO, but we believe we are in a good place, just waiting the paperwork.
So Chairman, it is online. You maybe got a physical copy, but I will ask the majority floor to bring you my copy. So again, these joint conference committee reports are under amendments online for the pages. So it has been approved and come back. And we can certainly delay it, Madam Chairman, if you'd like. Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Conference Committee report number 1 to House Bill 127 and ask for your concurrence. So folks, this is the public health orders bill. We met twice, kind of with recess. We had some arm wrestling and some gnashing of teeth. Ultimately, we felt that we ended up in an okay place. So here is what we did. We accepted some of the Senate amendments, and those are on page 1, line 14, we inserted their language that requires local health officers to provide 48 hours of notice and public comment period unless the delay will result in immediate and life-threatening and so on situation. So if it's an urgent emergency, they don't have to do the notice. But in discussion with some people in my county, the 48 hours would have helped, restaurants who are being shut down and that kind of thing. So we accepted that. Then the only other change that then there is a technical correction on page 2, line 21. Actually, that was brought to us by LSO, just inserting some wording about health district. That was just technical. Then the other main change that we did is on page 5 on the bottom. And this is where the Senate had wanted to insert a lot of activity of the legislature. And we just felt that we didn't feel that agile. I don't know if it was because we weren't even all that old down there. We just didn't feel that agile. We didn't feel that that was a good idea. And so what we did was we accepted a little bit of their cleanup on the bottom of page 5, but stated then that the orders, remember that the original bill has the governor, the ultimate signatory of the state health officer or the state orders, that the orders shall only be in effect for 60 days. Okay, so we deleted all the business about the legislature's involvement. So what that actually ends up doing is you have the state office, the state orders. And again, just a reminder that we are not touching upon any health officer's ability to issue orders for isolation or quarantine of sick people. Okay, that's not touched at all. The only thing that this is touching is orders to affect businesses or people who are not sick. Okay, so the state health officer well, the governor, with the advice of the state health officer, can issue an order for 10 days and then for 60 days. After that, the bill is silent, okay? Concurrently, a local health officer could issue an order for 10 days or with a 48-hour delay if it's not an emergency. And then after that 10 days, the local electeds, whether it's commissioners or city council or whatever, has to issue the orders. There's no limitation on the length of their orders. That's existing language in the bill. We felt that it ultimately carried out what was a lot of people's desire to have the ultimate authority rest in the hands after an initial emergency with elected officials when you're dealing with people who are not sick. So that's the main change of the bill in general. And the concurrence, as I say, was to put in the 48 hours impact comment period for non-emergencies. And we did not accept the legislative involvement, but the impact, the ability of local electeds to have their say continues. I hope that was, I actually drew myself up a flow chart with a timeline, which I didn't have time to send out to you, but I'd be glad to answer any questions if that's not clear. But I do ask for an aye vote.
Thank you, Chairman Wilson. Any member first time on House Joint Conference to House Bill 127? First time. Representative Gray.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm probably going to vote aye on this because it's what we got at this point, but I just want to express, my extreme disappointment in the direction of this. I think the language is very odd. It's not clear to me whether after 60 days, another order, it's unclear. I mean, the chairman says, well, it's silent. Well, I read it to say that even a substantially similar order couldn't be extended, which I guess in the context of the current thing, I'm okay with. But if the hope is to give flexibility, which is not necessarily my intent on this, I think that language is actually really restrictive. But that's not so much. I mean, that to me, that section is just a little wacky. But from where I'm coming from in terms of my beliefs is that the legislature should be involved in this. I really believe that, and I will never understand why the legislative branch, and it's not just in this state, it's at the federal level, it's in other states, why the legislative branch over and over and over again seeks to defer its authority to the executive branch. It's very odd to me, and I don't understand it. So, not having that there where there would be a clear nexus. I mean, the reality is the way the current one played out, yeah, the statute was odd, but everyone thought it was coming from the head of the chief executive. That's how it got interpreted. So this is basically keeping it in line with what the perception already is. So it's kind of a cleanup bill at this point, outside of the wacky language that I was describing earlier. But the substantive change that I think really would have been impactful would have been to have that legislative involvement, that interaction, because we are closest to the people. We have 9,000 constituents. I get in my vehicle, I'm right there. I mean, I'm there in my district. I'm there when I'm at home. I mean, it's just, so we're equipped to handle this. And I just think conceptually the bill is very odd and is wrong-headed. And then the language that is in there on the 60 days, I guess that's more in line with where I'm at and trying to restrict these, but it's wacky. I mean, I don't know what it does. If it says that a substantially similar order shouldn't be granted after 60 days, well, then the way I read that is you can't do anything past 60 days, which I guess in the current context I'm okay with, but that's the way I read that. But that's not so much why I'm concerned. I'm more concerned about not including the legislative branch. So anyway, thanks.
Thank you. I'm going to go online. I've got several people lined up online. So Representative Schwartz and then Representative Hallinan. Representative Schwartz, please,
Thank you,
on
Mr.
joint conference 1.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to go back to what I stated yesterday about the 48-hour requirement of notice. And I recognize it's conditioned by life-threatening, but I think we're too focused on the events of the last year and not imagining what future public health crises might look like that may not be life-threatening, but require an immediate response for the welfare of the people. So I will be opposed to this. I would add also, I'm concerned about making public health issues political and involving the legislature and county commissioners on a regular basis. They're not always the best informed or most appropriate body to deal with these. So I will be a no vote and encourage everyone else to do the same.
Representative Hallinan, then we'll come back to the chamber for a couple of folks. So Representative Hallinan, for your first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm sorry that yesterday I didn't really comment on this bill when it came up, but I had to think about it a little bit. And the way I think about it is that these issues have been mishandled by the experts, unfortunately. We've had all kinds of issues have been botched by the experts. And the public needs to have some input into these decisions because they're involved in the outcomes of those decisions. What's been done in the schools around this country, outside of Wyoming, is a shame. And it's been botched by the CDC. And that is the expert body that we should rely upon. But the public has had a better idea of how to respond to many issues than the experts. And we are the people's house, and we should represent the people in these issues. And I don't think that the people are going to call for anything outlandish in response to this pandemic. I think that their thoughts on it have been equally good to those of the CDC. And I think we need to look at what the people have to say. And I think we are the representatives of the people. And we have to have a role in this decision, in these decisions that are going to take place. So for that reason, I don't know whether I'm going to vote for yes or no on this conference committee report. But I wanted to state this for the record, that I think that we need to represent the people in these decisions. And for that reason, I thought I needed to comment on this joint conference committee report. So thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Vice Chair Larson in the chamber. Vice Chair Larson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd encourage an aye vote on this. I'd just like everyone listening to kind of look at what's been done and don't get tangled up because we didn't hold your hand and take you and tuck you in bed, perhaps to the degree that you had hoped.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker.
What's your point,
He's
Representative?
talking about what is in someone's mind and sort of in a condescending manner. Can we just tighten it up a little bit? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Always appreciate it. Representative Larson, to the bill, to the joint conference, please.
My apologies for being condescending, Mr. Chairman. Certainly was not my intent. I guess I was responding to the claims on dumb language and other such remarks as that. But let's go and look and see what we do in the bill here. We had concerns about having a non-elected person overseeing the administration of a health pandemic like we had this last year. And so this bill gets rid of that. And it comes back and it says we create 35-1-310, and we put the responsibilities really back to the local people, more local than us, to county commissioners, to municipalities and political subdivisions, to their health officers if they have one, and if they want to extend quarantines, or to people who are not who are not ill past that 10 days, the governing body, county commissioners, city council, whoever, then gets to do that. If the governor determines that it needs to be a statewide issue, then he can do the same thing. He can do it for 10 days, or he can come back and do a follow-up one for a maximum of 60 days. Now, what we reached is at the end of 60 days, it stops. What's the governor's options at that time? Could he call us into special session? There's no language here to prevent that. He can call us into special session for anything and involve the legislature if he thinks that that's necessary. It might be a situation where the counties could then handle it, and we have in place for them at the end of 60 days that they make their own decision with regard to local officials closer to people, frankly, than even we are, to make those decisions. And so although it doesn't involve the legislature directly, it doesn't exclude them. If the governor feels that we need to meet in special session, or if we feel that we need to meet in special session, we can call ourselves in and address those issues. But it does provide a way for even closer to the people jurisdiction to decide how they want to proceed forward with a health issue. And we thought that that was reasonable. We thought that that was even closer to the people, and thought that it would be well received by this body, because we are trying to bring it back as close as possible to the people. And so I'd encourage an aye vote. And again, Mr. Chairman, I apologize for my condescending attitude.
I think you've got members online. I had Representative Stiff, but his hand went down. So Representative Stiff, did you want to address this bill?
Mr. Speaker, my question was answered. Thank you.
All right, Representative Heiner for first time on the bill, on the joint conference.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to come out in opposition to this joint conference resolution. Nearly 250 years ago, our founding fathers built a constitution based upon checks and balances. And our Constitution has stood strong because of those checks on the various parts of government, so that there are checks on their power and authority. This bill, as it is right now, gives the elected CEO of the state and the opportunity of calling an emergency for 60 days, but then it's silent to what happens after that. And we've seen in other states during the last pandemic how similar legislation, the elected officer was able to re-up or renew the emergency situation and just keep doing that for nearly a year. So I think what our original intent was is after the 60 days, allowing for the governor to have a quick response, we need to bring in a check and balance, and that is in the form of the legislature. Let's not forget the ability of technology that we've learned this session, that we can convene rapidly and efficiently in this virtual format. If the need arises, we can take testimony, and we can create a better decision based on more input from people that are closer to the citizen and representing the different areas of our state. So I still believe that we need to have a check and balance in this in the future. And the legislature is that check and balance that we need to have. So I'm in opposition to this. And I think we need to go back and bring the legislature back into this. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. Representative Hunt, first time on the conference committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm in favor of the conference committee report. I don't know if it's absolutely perfect, but I think that it certainly, as currently stands, addresses some of the concerns that I had with the amendments that were brought over by the other body. I'm starting to sound like a broken record, but one of the things that we need to consider here is that not all public health emergencies are always going to be the same. And for whatever factors that we've experienced over the past year, and as we have seen in individual counties and individual communities, the circumstances on the ground have been different a little bit here and there across the state. And so I would respectfully say that if we adopt this as is, we as the legislative branch are not ceding any power to anybody. We already don't have it. But at least the way that this is currently written, there are some elected officials at a certain level who will have a say in it that currently don't right now. We are giving back some authority to elected representatives, even if it's at the local level, that they don't currently have, that would be taking the place of what is currently handled by appointed, frankly, with all due respect, unaccountable people who have not been voted on by the public. And so I think that I think, like I say, it may not be perfect, but I think that the conference committee here has done a very respectable job in trying to reach a middle ground here. And I simply don't think that in all circumstances, we, the 90 folks who make up the state legislature, it would be unwieldy. I really think that. Maybe not always. And with modern technology, as we've utilized a lot this past year, we've been given a lot more options. But I would encourage you all to consider, you can play what if all day, but certain scenarios where it would be a quote unquote public health emergency, but there would be circumstances, whatever that might be, where either our technology doesn't work, or we are stranded in our homes for whatever reason and we can't get to Cheyenne, or we cannot convene as a full body. And maybe somewhere down the road, we need to have a discussion for another date and time about what the definitions of a public health emergency are. Maybe that needs to be looked at, but I'm getting off topic. But I really believe that the committee has done a very good job of striking a middle ground here. And at least we can go forward if we do with this and say that elected officials had a voice in this. It may not be us, it may be the county commissioners, but I'm okay with that. So I would encourage your aye vote. Thank you.
Thank you. Other members for their first time. I had a representative up, but I don't see him now. I see one going to the microphone, nothing online. Representative Jennings, first time
Thank
on
you,
the
Mr.
conference
Speaker.
committee.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I look at this a little bit differently. I look at it that our law was not broken. There was a misinterpretation because it had worked fine for all of our statehood. We have not run into this issue until last year. And so as I look at what I consider to be the misinterpretation by an unelected and then an elected, I really wanted this to be a bill that I could support. And I do agree that there has been some work done and it has moved the ball a little bit. But I had hoped that we would come down here and have a robust conversation about what happened in our citizens' lives for the last year. The businesses that lost their businesses, or the people that lost their businesses, and what happens when something doesn't happen right, or there's a misinterpretation, or the intent was driven differently than what it had been written 120 years ago, or however far back. But I'm going to urge a no vote because I feel like that this concurrence does not go quite far enough. It doesn't really drive the needle one way or the other. And I feel like that our constituents, that's what they expected out of us. Before we came down here, we all heard about that. And I just don't feel like that this one really gets the job done and doesn't quite scratch where it itches. So I'm going to urge a no vote.
Thank you. Any other members? First time, joint conference one. Joint conference one. Representative Martinez.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm going to urge an aye vote. And the reason why is because, well, I think it's a good effort. I wanted to respond to the notion that we didn't have a good enough conversation. We had several bills that related to public health. And we had an opportunity to be concerned, not just about we had an opportunity to also take care of those who lost their jobs, not just how it affected their business. And when we rejected Senate File 30, after a robust conversation, this is the best option we have now. So for that reason, I would say vote aye. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, first time Joint Conference Committee number one, Representative Craigo, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just have a question, I guess, for the committee, for the conference committee. As I read, and this is sort of me just reading it from a lawyer's perspective, as I read the amendments into the engrossed bill, on line 19, the words subsequent orders, and it's plural, not singular. And so I'm really wondering how that actually prevents the governor from issuing more than one subsequent order. I mean, I'm in favor of the idea of the governor signs one subsequent order and it lasts for 60 days and it goes to the county commissioners or the city council or wherever it goes after that. But I'm just curious if that actually does limit him to one 60-day extension, or whether that means he can issue as many orders as he wants for 60-day periods. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other members, first time? Members, first time. Second time, Representative Gray, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, to respond to a couple of those points, the legislature in the past has totally deferred this authority. And so it's good that it's being clarified here, but I would have liked the legislature to be able to have some involvement in this decision, in the approval of these orders. And I think that, we had that discussion on concurrence yesterday, although the discussion was framed, hey, we should have a discussion was the reason. But the reality is that I don't understand why the legislative branch would continue to defer this authority. It doesn't make sense to me. This argument too, that there could be a crisis where we couldn't meet, where maybe internet would be out. Not that I would be a fan of this, but there's a lot of debate around what substantially similar is. So even if you had a 10-day limit, it could be, the governor could make a decision and then it could be challenged. And if we're not meeting, I doubt the courts would be meeting, or maybe they wouldn't grant cert on it. If you were in extreme crisis that we couldn't meet within 60 days, I think that as we saw in this last one, that there would be ways that the governor would interpret the statute. And I'm not sure the courts would take that case. So it's just really disappointing that we didn't have this discussion other than the concurrence yesterday. I am going to vote aye though, because I'm pretty confident it's only going to get worse if it fails. Thank you.
Thank you. Any members for their second time? I had any members second time? I'm looking online. Members online second time. Online. To the chamber. Last time, going once, going twice, Chairman Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So I've tried to take notes on all of the questions here, and I guess I'll kind of hard to know where to start. Maybe I'll work from back to front. We have had actually pretty significant legislative discussion. We had bills in committee, at which I understand that really no citizens showed up to testify, that went through the process on the House side. We discussed it on the House side, it went down the hall, we discussed it there. And I would submit to you that That is the legislative involvement that we are assigned. We are to write the laws. The legislature's job is not to pull the levers and push the buttons 12 months of the year. That's not what we do. We write the laws, and that's what we are doing now. So a question about what happens after the 60 days. And that's true. We deliberately put a period there, and then there are some other options. Our goal there was to put a stop at the 60 days. Yes, it's possible the very next week, the governor could issue another order. But because there's a 60-day stop, that will really cause political pressure on the governor with the advice of the state health officer, say, okay, let's take a breath. Let's see what's happened around the state with all the various counties. Where do we really need to go now? So that obligation to stop and think about it. And as was mentioned by a previous speaker, if we really felt things were just in a terrible situation, and if we could call ourselves, I mean, not to get, all conspiracy, we could have an electromagnetic pulse situation and no electricity. I mean, I don't know what would happen, but we could call ourselves in. That is not precluded. We actually felt it would be better to not tie that down too tightly. I think the good thing about where we've come, and you'll see from the people who have talked, you can see that we're all over the map. The 60 here, the 30 down the hall. We've got people who liked it exactly the way it was and thought that the state health officer should have clamped down more, and who knows, required double masks and duct tape all over your body, versus other people who wanted nothing to happen. I mean, really, I mean, it's not that beautiful of a child because it is very much of a compromised position. And what we are trying to do in the conference committee is find a balance between the ability of the state health officer and the advice to the governor and a statewide situation, and the county electeds, the people at close to whatever the situation might be. As was mentioned, we had really different situations on the ground. And so I would suggest that, in fact, by involving the county commissioners more than the legislature, we're doing a good thing here, because for all that a person might say, hey, I know my constituents, there are 75 people out of the legislature who do not know my constituents. And the county commissioners know the constituents far better than someone knows my constituents who lives in the far, in Star Valley or northeastern Wyoming. So I think our desire to have our fingers on it and impact the whole state, I don't think that is actually the best way to deal with something that might be really different on the ground. There was one question about the 48 days, and I'll just refer specifically to the language there, the 48 hours, for the local comment period. It says, except when the delay will result in immediate and life-threatening physical harm, exposure, or transmission beyond the existing affected area. So I think that puts it a little bit beyond, I think that made it fairly flexible or reasonably flexible anyway, in order to find the balance between, say, notifying restaurant owners that you shouldn't order your food for the week and something immediately is happening. So again, it's a compromise, as these things are. And as you can see by the desires of the people around you who would like to go way far one direction, way far the other direction, I feel that we found a good place here where we have brought input of the people through their elected officials into the picture, while at the same time enabling the health officers locally and at a state level to use their expertise and try to find a balance, not just for the particular situation that we experienced, but in unforeseeable ones in the future. And that's why we left it where it was. So I would encourage an aye vote on our report.
So I do see Representative Hallinan has raised his hand, but I've already asked for second time before the movement. So we're going to go ahead and proceed with the vote, Representative Hallinan. So members, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1, report to House Bill 127. A majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
Aye.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown, Burkhart, Burt excused, Clausen, Clifford,
Aye.
Connolly, Crago,
No.
Duncan, Eklund, Air,
Aye.
Flitner,
No.
Fortner,
No.
Gray, Greer excused, Hallinan,
No.
Haroldson,
Aye.
Harshman, Minor,
No.
Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner,
Aye.
Knapp,
Aye.
Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan,
No.
McGuire, Martinez, Nyman, Newsom excused, Nicholas, Oakley,
Aye.
Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman excused, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe,
No.
Schwartz,
No.
Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith,
Aye.
Stibar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, excused, Western,
Aye.
Wharf, Williams excused, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker, Harshman, excused. Closing vote, are there any changes? Closing vote,
Representative Flitner, are you changing your vote?
Flitner, no to aye, correct? Further changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 35 aye, 18 no, 7 excused.
Members, by your vote, you had voted to adopt Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on House Bill 127. The next conference committee is number 1 on House Bill 254, Chairman Burkhart. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move Joint Conference Committee Report Number 1 to House Bill 254 and ask for your aye vote. So, ladies and gentlemen, there was a lot of work involved in this, number of changes, and I will just walk through those quickly and try to explain them. We adopted Senate Standing Committee Amendment 1 and Standing Committee Amendment 2. And we deleted the Senate's Committee of the Whole Amendment 1 and further amended the engrossed copy to include a number of issues that were important to the Senate, but also important to us. And it shortened the bill up quite a bit. In all the stipulations we'd originally put in there, what we removed was going to the University of Wyoming and including them in discussion in favor of only involving ETS. And that would open up the university to the ability to potentially bid on replacing the system and have their computer sciences department do that. The other important, probably one of the most important things we added in there, the Senate had it, but was deleted out, and we added it back in, was the requirement that before any money is expended on this, they have to get legislative approval. And that's a control. They can do the studies, they can do RFPs and that, but they have to get legislative permission before they proceed. And that. So with that, I'd ask for your aye vote. If there are any questions, glad to answer them.
Thank you, Chairman. Any members for their first time on Joint Conference 1, House Bill 254, Representative Jennings?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a question. So what ended up with the increase of the fees? Is that out now or is it back in?
Thank you. Any other members first time? We're on first time Joint Conference 1, House Bill 254. First time. Seeing none in the chamber, no additional in the chamber. Oh, Representative Brown in the chamber.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I struggle with the idea of saying that we have to reappropriate money on this. And the reason I'm going to say this is I've been on this committee for 5 years now, and I think this was a concern with this committee and this particular agency about 4 or 5 years before me coming onto this committee about this particular system. And we've tried and tried and tried to figure out a way to pay for it. Well, now what we heard from them was, you know what, we'll find a way to pay for it. Just give us the authority to do it. We'll take it out of the highway fund. We'll take it out of wherever we got to do this. Just tell us to do it. So we have the authority to do it. So we give them that. This body says, we're going to give you that authority. Goes down the other side of the hall. We go to conference committee and they say, you guys can do a whole bunch of stuff, but you can't do anything with it until we tell you you can do it. My question is to this body, what happens if this system crashes? Let me tell you, all this discussion about voter identification and all that stuff that's happened, that all goes down the drain because everything that we use for voter ID and voter registration data goes through this revenue information system. If this system crashes and we're out of session, the way that this bill reads right now, we're going to have to be called into a special session just to authorize the expenditure of money to build the system again. And I struggle with that. I don't understand this insatiable need for our body to continuously hold the purse strings on the executive branch. While I understand it to a certain extent, I don't understand this particular issue. We have fought and fought and fought trying to figure out a way to get this system paid for. They tell us we don't need the system to be paid for. We just want to replace it. Please let us just replace it. And we say, okay, but not until we approve funding. What kind of message are we sending with this bill? What point is this bill even at that? You guys can put out RFPs, you guys can do all the information and everything that you need to do, but you still have to come back for funding. They've been coming to us for funding for 7 or 8 years now. And we've refused to do this. It left this body saying, here's the money, or here's the authority to go do it. And now we're completely reverting back on the House position. The House position was, get this fixed. And now we're saying, get this fixed when we tell you you have the money to fix it. I'm going to ask for a no vote. And I struggle with going back to an open committee. Good grief, no. But I really don't understand why we reverted back so easily and rolled over and said, yep, we're going to let the Senate have this. Thank you.
Thank you. Majority Floor Leader Summers, first time, Joint Conference 1, 254.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So a little bit on what the last speaker said. Without the provision of authority to do it, I don't really know what use the bill is. So are we solving any problem with this bill now? And that's what I need to know. And if so, what is it?
Thank you. Vice Chair Larson, first time.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And also in response to the good Vice Chairman of Transportation's questions is as we've looked at this system over the last few years, particularly in the Appropriations Committee, we see a price tag of $50 to $80 million, and we see a time frame of getting it put into place of up to 5 years. And so our questions, as we've talked about that, even with them funding it themselves, our question is, in 5 years with technology, will it be antiquated? The answer to that was yes. Well, why does it take 5 years? And why would we want to spend $80 million on on a system that when we get it, is going to be antiquated. Then we hear that once it's in place, it'll cost us $1.4 million a year to maintain it. Why? We've not received the answer to that. We don't know why. Then as we hear from other software entities or that provide systems, they're all kind of, they come to us and say, we don't understand why it's going to take 5 years, and we certainly don't understand $80 million or $50 million. And so we think, so the reason that we think that they need to come back and get legislative approval is because we're not comfortable, at least I'm not comfortable with writing a check for $80 million and have an antiquated system at the time we get it put into place, and then pay $1.4 million a year for a maintenance agreement. And so we think that having that discussion over the interim, there's no argument that we have to replace the system, but we're not sure that we have the right system yet to replace it. And we think that that warrants further discussion and then approval by this body before we move forward. And so we're certainly not questioning the need, and certainly not questioning the good department's efforts to fund it themselves and seeing the urgency in that. We do too. We just don't think we've had the answers yet and need to get to those before we move forward. So I'd encourage an aye vote.
Thank you. Chairman Nicholas, first time on that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So ladies and gentlemen, we had a consultant evaluate the agency's current system, and they told us it's low, it has a very low risk of failure. So that was an interesting thing. That was contrary to what they've been telling us for the past 5 or 6 years. So what they said to us was, you should not be in a hurry to replace this, because this system is likely to fail. So that was the first thing that we found interesting, but was contrary to what we've been told for the last 3 or 4 years. When this bill first came out, this bill had 4 pages of requirements that were drafted by with the assistance of ETS on everything this new system should do. And if you go back to the original House bill, it's page 4 through 9, and it itemizes exactly what this new system needs to look like, what it needs to interface, who they need to talk to. It brings in UW to assist in that process, so that if this is going to be a 20 or 30 or 40 or $50 million system, the university would have the opportunity to not only help develop it, but even bid on the project. So when it left here, we didn't give them a carte blanche to do anything other than do their homework and do it right. That's the way the bill left here before. And that's what this current bill does as well. We just took out some of that fine tuning language that kind of walked through requirements. And we said, you got to come to us with a plan in July of this year. And then you have to report to us quarterly after that. And each plan you bring to us, you need to run through ETS, have them review it and comment on us, and then ETS then will come back to us as well and tell us about what they think about the plan. So that's consistent with this whole panorama of ETS issues around all of the state agencies that we've been trying to incorporate the last few years. So on in favor of the amendment and support of the concept.
Thank you. Representative Stivar, first time on the Joint Conference Committee on House Bill 254.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On and against the amendment or the conference report. The way I understand it, that fee's still in there. Session in 2017, this body raised the driver's license fee and registration fees by $5. 2019, we extended our expiration date on our driver's license by 1 year. So as long as that fee's in there, we don't need to keep passing fees on to our constituents. If we're going to pass a fee, let's extend our driver's license out to 7 years for renewal. On and against.
Thank you. Any other members first time? First time, Representative Henderson, first time on the joint conference.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I speak on and for this for the following reasons. This has been a problem for years. This just doesn't happen yesterday. So the agency and those others involved been trying to do their very best to figure out what's required, how to prevent this from happening again, and how much is it going to cost? So if you compare this bill, as the two speakers before me was talking about, in terms of what it does involving other assets that we have in our state that can help get the solution done and prepared for properly, well, I think we're at a point where it makes sense. And I support this. So I'd urge your aye vote on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any of the members first time? We're on first time. Any members first time? Going once, going twice to second time. Second time, Majority Floor Leader Summers.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. So I sat on that Good Appropriations Committee when we got that report from the consultant. And I will agree the consultant said that it was a low risk of failure, but he also gave a green light to the purchase. And in my opinion, they looked at the factors of what was being evaluated by the agency and they said all of that had been taken care of. So they were a green light on the process to purchase. That to me is not the point in this whole thing. Is what does this bill do now? Does it do anything of substantive? And so that's what I'm asking the sponsor, because when he started out, yes. When it left here, yes. Now it's coming back after a conference committee. I don't know that the bill does anything, and I just need to know what it does.
Thank you. Representative Brown, second time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, really good friend from, the east side of the winds that got up here and spoke and said to the effect that, well, if we buy this system now, is it going to be antiquated in 5 years? And the answer was yes. Minus one particular individual, and I think we all know who we're talking about. Most of us go buy a new phone just every couple of years, and it's antiquated within about 2 or 3 months. There's always something newer. There's always something better that's going to be out there. And so I understand the necessity of wanting to be at the leading edge in 5 years when we put this in, but it's not possible. We can only buy what we can buy today. We can't buy something that's, future proof. We don't have a clue on that. So I disagree with that sentiment. That being said, I think that the previous speaker right before me just said it perfectly. I think as it's coming out of this conference committee, and I do look to hear from the chairman on it, I don't feel like this bill is actually doing much of anything except passing some words on a piece of paper to go get signed. I don't know that we're actually accomplishing what we set out to accomplish. So just keep it in mind that when we hear this discussion constantly, that we want something that's future proof. It doesn't exist, ladies and gentlemen. We can do our dangest, but it's just not possible. We've got to be able to buy what we can buy today. And then I've had a sidebar discussion about, well, then we have a huge maintenance contract on it. Well, okay. Maybe we figure out a way to handle that maintenance contract in-house. We hire the state employees to take care of this in-house. That's like blasphemy in this chamber. We don't do that. We don't hire state employees. So we're in a situation, and I'm telling you, I think after 5 years of hearing this, we haven't had a major failure yet. Thank goodness we haven't had a major failure, but if we do, we will get called into a special session to fix this. It's that critical of a piece of everything that we do in this state. Our police officers depend on it. Your insurance rates depend on it. Our voter identification systems work on it. That everything across the board works on it. So I think we need to do more for this bill. And I think we need to vote no, go back to another conference committee today and try to clean this up and get a bill passed that actually accomplishes something. Thank you.
Thank you. Second time, Representative Jennings.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I think the last speaker and I are going to agree on that part, that maybe a no vote is the right thing. So I'm hearing really conflicting things here in my mind. first of all, I think about the phone analogy. Well, the difference is I don't get my neighbor to go pay for my phone. I make a decision there myself. I don't go. So we're spending people's money. And so we want to think about that, how serious that is. And I also agree with the majority floor leader that I'm not sure this bill does much of anything anymore. Just the authority thing. So I think I'd want to hear a little more about that. The one thing that I haven't heard yet, and I think that this bill probably does, is it still increases our fees. And so if it's a question of authority and we're going to raise taxes on people, I would like to hear that part. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. No, on the.
Thank you. Any other members for their second time? We're on second time before the movement. Chairman Burkhart.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So let me address the fees issue first. Excuse me. It adds $5 fee to each driver's license, new or renewal. And we renew our driver's license every 5 years. That's $1 a year in this 5 years that this will take to for them to replace it. That's once all of us pay that $5 fee. All of our records are in this system. All of them. If you need a driver's license check, it's in this system. And without it, insurance companies aren't going to want to write you insurance. You aren't going to be able to get probably a real ID. So it'll take a passport to get on an aircraft if you need to fly somewhere. And in the middle of the night, when you have to fly somewhere to take care of a sick relative and you don't have a passport, it's going to be awful tough to get on an airplane to do that. All of those records are in this system. And so that fee starts the process of providing a small amount of money. Total, it'll be about $830,000 a year goes into this fund. And that's what the Senate put back in, was only that. They didn't put it in on vehicle registrations, only a driver's license. And that's the fee. The second standing committee amendment was done by the other body's appropriations committee. And what they did is directed, if you remember, we had 50% of the fees that are charged to third-party users going into the fund to pay for this system. This directs that all of those fees from third parties go in there. So, and I've heard a lot about what does this bill do? And I really didn't want to go through the bill again. We've already done that, but I'll stick to the amendment and the conference committee. And if you go back to your original bill, and that might be easier to do, we add a section that reads, "Department shall not expend any funds from any source for the replacement of the revenue information computer system without legislative authorization for expending those funds." Now, I've heard it said on this floor numerous times, the legislature wants to be involved. We want to have final approval of spending money. We want to have final approval of things that come out of the executive branch. We want to say, and what I've heard here at the podiums is, no, we don't want to say. We just want to turn them loose. And frankly, I don't want to do that because we don't know an exact amount of money on this system. I've heard as low as 20 million will replace it. I've heard as high as 80 million. And if you just turn them loose to replace the system, it might not be 80, but I can sure bet it's probably not going to be 20. It'll be up there. It gives us some control. You have to remember, we'll probably be back here in July. They have until July to give us a report on the costs and everything else. That's an awful quick turnaround for an agency to give us a report on what it will take to replace this system. And I don't think it'll take 80 million. I really don't in this day and age. And we do need to replace this system. The rest of the bill, we deleted a lot of the additional wording the Joint Conference Committee did. And we added in, for all those stipulations, reduced it down to pretty much 2 paragraphs. First one reads, Department of Transportation shall develop and purchase the Transportation Information System to replace the Revenue Information System in consultation with the Department of Enterprise Technology. The ETS shall advise the Department of Transportation on all aspects of the TIS project, Transportation Information System project, including review of any request for proposals. Not later than July 1st, 2021, Department of Transportation and ETS, and remember, we've deleted out discussion of the university, and ETS shall provide to the Joint Transportation Highways Military Affairs Interim Committee and to the Joint Appropriations Committee a proposed timeline for each phase of the TIS project purchase, development, configuration, migration, and full implementation. Department of Transportation and ETS shall provide the joint committees quarterly reports in the progress of the project. We stay involved. We know what's going on. The rest of it we've deleted on all those stipulations. We also require, if you remember back to the bill, that they get this done in 6 years. And I'll tell you what, we don't have any way of replacing it right now. And for the discussion of we'd have to come back into special session, that's true. Even without this bill, we would have to do something because you'd have no access to the information. You know, law enforcement wouldn't have access, Department of Health wouldn't have access, any number of other departments wouldn't have access. So what this does is, in effect, tells the Department of Transportation, replace the system. You have 5 years to get it done. You come up with funding, we will approve it. And I think we want that control in order to let them know that someone is watching. We get quarterly reports. And I think that control is important. Like I said, we've all said on this floor, we want this body to be involved in these decisions. And now we're saying we don't. We want to turn them loose with $80 million of money. I don't think I want to do that. Plus, we'll be back here a year from now, a little bit shorter. And it takes time to do these, to prepare the timelines and those sorts of things. And I think we have plenty of time to do a final review and approval. So that's what it does. It replaces the system. And we've talked about, well, it's going to be obsolete in a period of time. Everything is going to be obsolete in a period of time. And some things faster than others. If you're one of these people who buys a new vehicle every year, you can see the changes in the electronics just from year to year. You can look at the cell phones. When you buy your cell phone, the day you walk out of the store with it, it's obsolete. If you buy a new computer, the day you take delivery, it's already obsolete because they're working on the next generation. And that's just the way technology works right now. We use what we have until we have to replace it. This is a system we have to replace. Remember, this was put in 1986. There are people who don't even understand how it works now. And you look at some of the current IT people, they probably couldn't tell you how it works. So I would ask that you approve the Joint Conference Committee. It gives us control. It still establishes a good timeline, and it gets this system replaced in relatively short time frame of 5 years. So with that, I'll call for the question, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. So members, we are voting on Joint Conference Committee number 1 to House Bill 245. Majority of the elected members is required 254, just like I didn't say. House Bill 254, Joint Conference 1. A majority of the elected members is required to adopt the report. Chief Clerk, please call the roll.
Andrew. Baker.
No.
Banks. Bear. Blackburn. Brown. Burkhart. Burt, excused. Clausen. Clifford.
Aye.
Connolly. Crago.
Aye.
Duncan. Eklund. Air.
Aye.
Flitner.
Aye.
Fortner.
No.
Gray. Greer, excused. Hallinan.
Aye.
Haroldson.
No.
Harshman, excused. Harshman, aye. Heiner,
Aye.
Henderson, Hunt, Jennings, Kenner,
Aye.
Knapp,
No.
Larson Lloyd, Larson Dan,
No.
McGuire, Martinez, Nyman, Newsom excused, Nicholas, Oakley,
Aye.
Obermuller,
Aye.
O'Hearn, Olson, Ottman excused, Paxton, Provenza, Roscoe,
Aye.
Schwartz, Schwartz,
Aye.
Sherwood, Simpson, Summers, Stith,
Aye.
Stivar, Sweeney, Walters, Washit, excused, Western,
No.
Wharf, Williams excused, Wilson, Winter, Yin, Zawanitzer, Mr. Speaker. Closing vote, are there any changes? Closing vote. The vote is closed. 32 aye, 22 no, 6 excused.
By your vote, you have voted to adopt Joint Conference Committee Number 1 report on House Bill 254. Mr. Majority Floor Leader. Mr. Majority Floor Leader.
Mr. Speaker, thank you. I move the House stand in recess until 2 p.m.
Thank you. So members, we are waiting on paperwork and signing of enrolled acts from the other end. We have no further business. I know there's at least one conference committee that's meeting this afternoon, and maybe there's some others as well. So appreciate your good work this morning. We will reconvene at 2 o'clock. The House is in recess until 2 p.m.